Hey there. Welcome to the Blathering Boomer. I'm going to have a very special guest today, Prince Agrawal. But before I get to him, I want to say a little bit about, to me, maybe the most important five-letter word in our English language, and that word is truth, truth. And to me, truth should always be a nonpartisan concept. But these days, in the world we live in, we have subjective truth and objective truth. To me, truth is just truth. So, what I did was I went ahead and Googled subjective versus objective. And here is what I got. Subjective statements are based upon one's own opinions and emotions. Objective statements are impartial, nonpartisan, based on multiple sources and verified facts. So, needless to say, I am a big fan of the latter, of the objective truth. Um, but these days, you know, when I grew up, Walter Cronkite was accepted as the truth, and then as cable news came on, some of us gravitated towards the MSNBC, CNN, others gravitated towards Fox News and Newsmax and all that, and nobody trusted each other because we're all getting different versions of truth. And to me, truth was rapidly becoming a rare commodity, as uh, as I said lyrically in a song that I wrote, but sorry, it takes me. I'm a boomer, so it takes me a little while to get things up on the screen. Anyway, here we go, and then we're gonna morph from my words, which is truth is becoming a rare commodity, to the words of somebody much wiser than myself.
You're trying to tell me that free speech is reckless. Now truth is becoming a rare commodity.
It was kind of an honor to have Hunter Thompson's face on this video over my words. But let's look at his words. Absolute truth, in other words, objective truth, is a very rare and dangerous commodity in the context of professional journalism, because that's pretty much what's going on these days. You tune into any of the cable news stations, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, Newsmax, blah, blah, blah. They all, and it gets worse because maybe you think, oh, I'll just go to independent podcasts. Well, the problem there is a lot of them have sponsors these days, and they're beholden to their sponsors. So, in search of truth, because from the Warren report to questions about what really happened on 9/11 to the Epstein suicide and thousands and thousands of other things in between, we don't know the truth. Well, then again, maybe we should just listen to the leader of the free world as he speaks about truth. And here we go.
We choose truth over facts.
I have no idea what that means, but he said it. Anyway, I have a very special guest coming on today. But again, before I bring him on, growing up in the 60s like I did, those of us who could afford one had encyclopedias, and that's where we found our truth. But right now, what we have is a thing called Wikipedia. And millions of us, myself included for many, many years, would go there for the truth. And they're great if you want to look up African antelopes and sports statistics and who's in what movie. But when it comes to anything that involves political opinion, they're kind of called into question. And they do have a mission statement. Because I actually, what I did was I went, did I say WikiLeaks? I meant Wikipedia. Anyway, I went to Wikipedia and I looked for the definition of truth on Wikipedia. And what I got was this screen, a fundraising screen, which every so often comes up at the top, and I get the emails, et cetera, et cetera. But the keywords that come out here is, it meant we could preserve our core values, neutral, high-quality information. Well, I'm not particularly sure that that neutral, high-quality information is their core value. And my guest has a lot more to say about that. So without further ado, let's bring in my good friend Prince Agarwal, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his experience with Wikipedia and truth. All right, Prince, take it away.
Hi, Ungri. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for hosting.
My pleasure.
Like many others, have used Wikipedia for years. It's been my go-to source for basic information, especially things I've never heard about, or if I just want to look up something quickly. It's very appropriate that I kicked off this video by quoting, showing a video of Joe Biden stating that he chooses truth over fact. Because one thing I've learned over the years is that Wikipedia has a somewhat similar mantra. They choose popular mainstream views over facts. There's a common saying about Wikipedia. The encyclopedia's reliance on outside sources, primarily newspapers, means it will only be as diverse as the rest of the media, which is to say, not vary. That becomes even more apparent when the underlying sources are limited to very partisan options. As the old saying goes, garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
A good comparison to Wikipedia is Facebook. It's a platform where people can express their opinions, often using a mainstream article or two as a source. Over time, Facebook has become an echo chamber for millions of people as they block dissenting opinions, either by blocking or defriending people who disagree with them. Wikipedia has evolved in similar ways. Whereas Encyclopedia Brittanica relies on experts to generate its entries, Wikipedia has been built by topic amateurs, scouring the internet for wherever they can find, meaning that the reliability and depth of understanding on any issue, on any article on Wikipedia is very limited. Wikipedia is a world where consensus and popularity are defined by the mainstream media opinion, in contrast to the mainstream society opinion, determines what gets published and turned into an article. And that becomes the main driving force of how Wikipedia defines truth, instead of using some sort of objective metric as Encyclopedia Britannica would use.
So you're saying that the truth we see on Wikipedia is possibly subjective and not necessarily objective. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. Yep.
Wow.
And it's very much based upon what they consider reliable sources and what those sources project. And we'll get into that. But one of the big problems with Wikipedia is that over the years, they've essentially banned or really restricted any source that's center or right wing, and everything's either moderately left to far left that's considered usable. So over the years, the reliability of Wikipedia and the neutrality of Wikipedia has gotten worse and worse as it continues to restrict editors, bans editors, create a convoluted set of rules for them to follow that forces them out, as well as restrict more and more sources, making them unusable, including original sources. So a person's actual writings or a person's actual speech, according to Wikipedia, isn't as reliable as an article about that speech or an article about that book, which will become more apparent and more important as we go deeper into this. About 15 years ago, there was also a push on Wikipedia. So when Wikipedia first started, let me back up. It was supposed to be a source for anything and everything that people wanted to add. So it was relatively open. Anyone could go on there and create a new article. About 15 years ago or so, there was a push to reduce and remove what was considered fringe ideas, aka anything that challenges the mainstream narrative, which the main administrative Wikipedia bureaucracy deemed to be harmful. They thought this would be a public, safety thing. Based on the current rules and structure of Wikipedia, if this was the 17th century, Wikipedia would have happily sided with the church and arrested and censored Galileo just because he challenged the mainstream, even though he was correct. What makes Wikipedia even more dangerous than Facebook is that it carries a huge illusion of authority, which elevates its opinions and entries far above that of a mere Facebook post, despite having relatively similar factual support. Both cases it'll just be an article or two or a handful of articles that back up the entire thing. People go to Wikipedia to seek truth, thinking that it's an encyclopedia without realizing that it's just an aggregation of popular opinions, largely based on a restricted list of very biased sources.
Wow. I'm one of those people who's gone to Wikipedia for years looking for facts. Truth versus facts. I guess they're two different things in this world.
Apparently, we're Orwellian world of doublespeak where words are starting to lose their meaning. But for this conversation, we'll keep the basic English definitions as we know them.
Right.
So to start off, I've broken this down into various parts. First thing I'm going to cover is, is Wikipedia biased? Is it controversial? And yes, it is. Questions and controversies about Wikipedia's bias and reliability issues are nothing new. It's been known for decades. Criticism of Wikipedia go back over 15 years. Many highlight its bureaucracy and convoluted rules, as well as its processes and internal biases. So here we are from the Times from 2007, questioning the reliability of Wikipedia and highlighting how it's just an aggregate of opinions from amateurs and not experts. In 2012, the American Economic Review article had an article that found Wikipedia's political entries to lean Democrat on average ever since its inception. In 2013, MIT Technology Review questioned the long-term viability of Wikipedia, citing issues with accuracy and restrictions against new editors, as well as a focus on having more articles instead of better quality articles. 2014, Harvard Business Review did a study about the bias of Wikipedia over Encyclopedia Brittanica. It found that the study found that there's a lot of research on the accuracy of Wikipedia, and the results are mixed. Some studies show that it's just as good as the experts. Others show that Wikipedia is not accurate at all. The study also warns that as the world moves from reliance on expert-based production to collective knowledge, it is unwise to blindly trust the properties of knowledge produced by the crowd. Their slant and biases are not widely appreciated, nor are the properties of the production model as yet fully understood. Both of those are quotes from the article. And we've seen that time and time again in society. Think of various parts of history where society held racist views or anti-Semitic views or other views. There were popular collective opinions that were accepted. That doesn't make it right, but that's the approach that Wikipedia has taken. For many years, Wikipedia co-founder Larry Sanger has been criticizing Wikipedia's bias as well. In many interviews and many articles, he's discussed how the far left bias has overtaken the site that he created and once loved. There's quote, there's a rewritten policy, but it's endorsed. This is the utter bankrupt canard of journalistic false balance, which is directly contradictory to the original neutrality policy of Wikipedia. As a result, even as journalists turn to opinion and activism, Wikipedia now touts controversial points of view on politics, religion, and science, Sanger wrote. Examples have become embarrassingly easy to find, he concluded. And then, and these are just a few select pieces, but there's dozens of articles talking about this, which surprisingly, despite how much it's been discussed, there's not a lot of acknowledgement in the mainstream about how biased Wikipedia is. So in 2002, investigative journalist John Stossel wrote about the bias in Wikipedia, which led him to stop donating to Wikipedia after doing so for years. To quote, all editing is done by volunteers. And he hit on a very interesting cultural point here. Wales hoped that there would be enough diverse political persuasion that bias would be countered by other biases to create a neutral view. But that's not what happened. Leftists just like to write. Conservatives like to build things, companies, homes, farms. You see the pattern comparing political donations from different professions. Surgeons, oil workers, truck drivers, loggers, And pilots lean right. Artists, bartenders, librarians, reporters, and teachers lean to the left. Conservatives don't have as much time to tweet or argue on the web. Leftists do. And they love doing this. This helped them take over the media, university, and now Wikipedia. And we can, see this as we look deeper into, education, Wikipedia, and other places that seem to have taken a strong shift to the left out of the world of neutrality. So let's dig into this deeper. How reliable is Wikipedia? There's been a notion and understanding that Wikipedia is, can be victimized by circular reporting. One of the biggest problems with Wikipedia is, as mentioned, they mostly rely on articles from mainstream sources, newspapers and such, and original sources, mostly just articles of what they focus on. And so here's a fun article from the New Yorker from 2014 about how a raccoon became an aardvark. And what this talks about, to summarize, is in 2008, a student edited a Wikipedia page about an animal called the coati, and added that it was, quote, also known as a Brazilian aardvark. However, this is blatantly false. He did this because he thought it was a Brazilian aardvark, and instead of wanting to be wrong as a joke, he corrected Wikipedia. He thought it would be taken down quickly. However, a year later, hundreds of articles mentioned Brazilian aardvark, referencing either the Wikipedia page or other articles that were referencing the Wikipedia page. Soon, the Wikipedia page itself started getting updated with references and citations from the articles that were talking about the Brazilian aardvark being the coati, without realizing there was a circular reporting going on, since all of those articles had an original source of Wikipedia. And it shows how badly inaccurate Wikipedia can become. Mostly because it's, most of the people doing the editing, most of the people who are writing about this aren't experts. They're just scouring Google, scouring the internet for what they can find, using some keywords, and then just either quoting or maybe even adding a little bit of spin to an article that they're going to reference.
And that's a good point regarding garbage in, garbage out. Circular reporting, I never had a word for it, but the straw that broke the camel's back for me with CNN, and I don't have the receipts for this, but I'm sure it's a pretty common occurrence. They made an outrageous, clearly false claim about something on CNN, and what they used for proof was a New York Times article.
Yeah.
So that is, I guess, what you would call circular reporting. And when I realized that this is what was happening, that's when I gave up on CNN as any possible hope of objectivity. What scares me, though, is that this is spread to Wikipedia, which, again, a lot of people, left, right, center, all over the place, millions of people go to Wikipedia for the truth. So I'm really grateful that you're doing this, and I'm going to get out of your way and let you keep going.
Well, and to highlight that point, going back to what, once again, Wikipedia co-founder Larry Sanger highlighted, journalism itself, and you discussed this as well, journalism itself is on a decline. You have less objective journalism and more opinion-based, opinion-focused journalism these days. And so, that's causing a big issue here because, like I said, garbage in, garbage out. If the sources aren't objective, if the sources aren't factual, and you're just highlighting and regurgitating opinion, you're not going to get anything very factual at all. And so, while this coati thing, it's small potatoes, and it's a fun thing to joke about, and after a number of years, it's finally been corrected. On issues like politics, current events, science, and some other areas, there can be a heavy bias, especially as opinion, especially in the realms of current events and politics, and even science, have overtaken any objective metric. It's interesting, too, because most schools will say you cannot use Wikipedia as a source. However, that does not seem to have trickled into the professional world, as journalists and others do seem to use Wikipedia as a source. In fact, as I was doing research on this for this podcast, one thing I came across was how there have been over 100 court briefings that have cited Wikipedia as a source, which is mind-boggling. Not a legal, not a legal judgment or case law. They cite Wikipedia. It's kind of mind-boggling. So we kind of covered circular reporting. So the next question is really, how bad is this? How important is this bias? Does it really even matter? And yes, in fact, it does. We've all been taught that first impressions are everything, and the first impression most people get on a variety of issues and on a variety of people comes from Wikipedia, especially since Google now promotes it near the top of its searches for almost all topics. So here's a Wikipedia page for the first son, Hunter Biden. As you can see, Hunter Biden is an American attorney, businessman, and artist. He's also been a hedge fund principal, a venture capitalist, a private equity fund investor. He's worked as a banker, a lobbyist, and a legal representative for lobbying firms. Sounds like quite a man. He's like the Superman of the professional field. A lawyer and an investor. He's like Matlock and Warren Buffett combined. What's interesting about this article is, one, it violates a number of Wikipedia rules. For example, the first paragraph needs to be cited. The first citation doesn't come until the end of the second paragraph. So it definitely violates various sourcing rules, showing that what's being pushed onto here is editor opinion instead of what it considers a source, which would be biased anyways. Second, if you look at the wording in here, the words that they use to describe various things are very soft and very protective. So, for example, it describes his struggle, his drug use and alcohol abuse as a struggle. The allegations against him, of various corruptions, which evidence has been growing, it openly labels as false allegations of corrupt activities and conspiracy theories. So already it's showing bias. It's using very strong terms to essentially debunk, any sort of negativity against Hunter. On the main page, there's there's very little mention of the laptop. There's a little bit here and there. There's a paragraph when you go further down. It does mention that some of the emails found on the laptop are authentic, despite the fact that the entire laptop has essentially been confirmed to be authentic by this point. It makes this point to state that no criminal wrongdoing has been found against Joe Biden, although there's a lot of evidence pointing to interaction that Joe Biden has had with Hunter's businesses, and it makes no mention of Hunter's history of prostitution, human trafficking, and it really waters down a lot of the accusations against him. It's really it's very, very favorable how Wikipedia has decided to present Hunter Biden. On the flip side, let's go to the Wikipedia page for Robert Kennedy Jr. Robert Kennedy Jr. is an environmental lawyer politician who promotes anti-vax propaganda and health-related conspiracy theories. None of this, puffy positivity, a direct attack. He's an anti-vaxxer and conspiracy theorist. When you go down to his career, the first thing you hit are, after failing his bar exam, he was charged with heroin possession and pled guilty, where he received probation. So already, we go from Hunter being this amazing investor and lawyer with unfounded and false accusations on one hand, to this man who has spent most of his life fighting to protect the environment, being labeled as an anti-vax propagandist and conspiracy theorist who's been arrested, who failed the bar exam and has been arrested for drug possession. Very, very steep contrast, don't you think? On top of that, they mentioned here.
We got to give Hunter Biden credit for one thing, though. Math. He's great at math because he knows how to calculate 10% for the big guy.
So he does.
There is that.
And how establish a number of shell companies to keep that money in.
Right. But
also,
this is really really scary stuff. It sounds like what you're saying is that Wikipedia has taken it upon itself to dole out the truth, and they're doing so in a partisan manner. Well, it just so happens that somebody tweeted just about this very thing. It says, when the day comes that the concept of truth in a society is routinely doled out in a partisan manner, that society is essentially doomed. And this guy goes on to say, we here in the USA are fast approaching that day if it hasn't already arrived.
And keep in mind, you use the truth a few times in that in that statement. We are using the Joe Biden definition of truth here. We're not using an objective truth. What we're using is a society, a biased quote unquote truth of groupthink is what they're trying to push. One last thing I want to add, by the way, about the way it's presented here. Hunter struggled. He had a personal struggle. We should feel for him for his personal struggles with drugs and alcohol abuse. RFK is just a convict. There's no mention of his struggles, especially in the wake of his uncle's assassination, his father's assassination. There's no counterpoint. They have a lot of attacks against him, no counterpoints to the attacks. And in fact, they label him anti-vax, first sentence, despite the fact that he's not anti-vax. He has said so on numerous occasions that he's not anti-vax, and we'll get into that in a second. And they don't care. Wikipedia is, based on their rules, they care more about notability and popular opinion than what you actually say and what you actually are. So if you've been slandered, they will continue to echo that slander instead of correcting it to, seek a factual truth. So, we can see the strong bias, between the two. And it's pretty harsh, especially considering that the first opinion that most people will have of Robert Francis Kennedy Jr. will come from his Wikipedia page. And how do we know that? One thing people won't realize is Wikipedia actually has a lot of information. Let me back up a second. If you go up, at the top, you actually have a number of things. You have talk, you have sources, you have view history, you have things like page information. If we go over the page information, you can see a variety of things. What it's about, the ID, blah, blah, blah. In the past 30 days, 1.4 million people have looked at this page to understand who Robert Kennedy Jr. is, as he runs for president. At one point, about a month ago, this number was up to 2.5 million. So a lot of people have been coming here to understand and discover who this person is that many of them have probably never heard about. And if the first impression that they get is a vaccine propagandist, anti-vax propagandist, conspiracy theorist, convicted drug addict, it's not going to create a very positive opinion versus, Hunter Biden, who, a lawyer, a hedge fund manager, a venture capitalist. Oh my God, he seems like such a wonderful person. You can see the vast difference in impressions they're trying to create. Why is this happening? What's going on? You can see, one of the things you can see is the various edits that have happened. So there have been a lot of edits on this page, considering how controversial, various, perspectives of Bobby Kennedy have been. But what's more, what can be really more interesting is the discussion. So this, Wikipedia, if you go up to the top and you go to talk, you can see the discussions that happen behind the edits. So especially on politician pages and some more controversial pages, you'll see these discussions. And you can see what type of bias is going into this. And there's been a lot of discussion on RFK. With a lot of people questioning, is this, is the article pushing propaganda? Is it incredibly biased? You will see some of these names pop up again and again, and they seem to be the ones who control the page. So it's long. So I've taken the time to select some of the more interesting biases, biased comments that have been posted onto the talk page. So, for example, here's someone defending the hard labeling of propagandists and conspiracy theorists by saying each word is backed by a reliable source, and as long as they're reflecting what the mainstream media includes, that is perfectly acceptable. Here's something that's really interesting from this editor. If you read the article, Kennedy is literally quoted as saying he's pro-vaccine and his children are vaccinated. Cool. That still doesn't negate the fact that he has gained notability for promoting unscientific and bullshit conspiracy theories about vaccines causing autism, and he has been named as one of the main players in the anti-vaccine movement. There was a response to that saying, your first sentence admits Robert Kennedy isn't anti-vax, but you're negating that fact based on slanderous opinions since they occur in writing. That's insanity, said this other commenter. Sir, again, quote, nah, my first statement says that the article actually includes RFK's denial, but when you constantly go about screaming from the rooftop about how vaccines are bad, you're going to be rightfully called anti-vaccine activist, regardless of whether you say, I'm not one of those guys. It's your word versus 20 reliable source words. You're not going to win that battle. There's no slanderous opinion or irrational dislike for RFK Jr. I'm not, this guy's not even US. It's just based on a litany of reliable sources. And so this is how these core editors and admins justify their biases. Oh, we're not biased. We're not biased. Wikipedia is biased. Oh, actually, not Wikipedia. Our sources are biased. And is that bad? Well, according to them, no. Wikipedia has a slew of rules. It's called Wiki lawyering. And if you go deep into the discussions, you'll see a lot of people using these references of various Wikipedia rules to bash people over the head for challenging them. It's especially used by old school editors who know how to use them well against new editors who are just trying to add some sanity to Wikipedia. Larry Sanger, one of his biggest complaints is how they've abandoned neutral perspective as a concept at Wikipedia. And what they've done is they've redefined neutrality to mean not neutral editing, neutral editing, not neutral content. So whereas once upon a time, Wikipedia was supposed to present things in an unbiased way, now Wikipedia absolutely can present things in a very biased way, as long as the source also is biased. It means neutrally reflecting what the source says. It does not mean the article has to be neutral. We do not document neutral facts or opinion. Another Wikipedia rule, by the way, is also assuming good faith. Good faith means assuming that people are not deliberately trying to hurt Wikipedia, in which is a top-notch thing, and also that they don't really have biases. They're just trying to be good faith servants of Wikipedia and projecting the truth. And so even though we may see comments like this, completely attacking RFK Jr., I don't care, screw him, more comments, about how it's heavily negative, and people demean his work. His work his work quite arguably wasn't sufficient to warrant a cabinet position. His name was Kennedy, and hence, which greatly helped the rumor consideration. Just like Hunter Biden wouldn't have been vice president of Amtrak without his father being a senator. People have discounted his work. You can see who is biased one way or the other. But we have to assume good faith on all parts based on the good faith rules. And if you don't, you can be banned for calling out biases. The thing gets really kind of crazy really quick. So, going along with that, Wikipedia doesn't really hide the fact that they're biased. Other founder of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales, who people describe as a benevolent dictator over Wikipedia, once wrote, Wikipedia's policies are exactly spot on correct. If you can get your work published in a respectable scientific journal, that is to say, if you can produce evidence enough through replicate experiments, then Wikipedia will cover it appropriately. We won't pretend that work of lunatic charlatans is equivalent of true scientific discourse. It isn't. And so here are the various biases. And these can be very broad. broadly defined based upon how the editors want to define it. And there's other rules too. Wikipedia isn't solely focused on truth or usefulness. And most importantly, what they care more about is verifiability. Have other people repeated the claim? That really is the benchmark of Wikipedia. It can be wrong, but if a lot of people have repeated what's wrong, Wikipedia will publish it because that's what's in the mainstream.
And there that's your circular reporting right there.
And it's interesting too, because as articles will start being published by ChatGPT, it'll be interesting to see how much worse this gets. One of the other things too is weight. So going back to the neutrality concept on Wikipedia, they don't give each side equal weight. Different sides have equal weighting, and Wikipedia takes that into account. So here's where it gets really fun. We have what's considered the general Wikipedia sources. Green for reliable, yellow for sometimes reliable, red for pink for somewhat unreliable, but can still be used in some circumstances perhaps, or as a backup source, and then things that you shouldn't use at all. So if we go in here and we can look up some sources, you'll get things like ABC News, ABC News, okay? You'll get CBS. Oh, interesting. No, CBS. You'll get Associated Press. Associated Press. You'll get Reuters. I can't spell today, apparently. You'll get Reuters. You'll get some of the sources you expect. But then you'll get things like MSNBC and The Atlantic and even something like Democracy Now! Very far left and heavily biased sources are either green or yellow. Like even Democracy Now! Can be used in many circumstances. But on the flip side, the New York Post, which exposed the Hunter Biden laptop, has in some ways been generally more reliable than the New York Times and Washington Post, cannot be used. Fox News. Generally, it's yellow. It's not fully a reliable source. Cannot be used for politics or science. Washington Examiner can be used in some circumstances, but not all. Washington Times. Yet Washington Post, Voice for America, which is actually state-owned, and many of these other things can be used. It's really kind of mind-boggling. And what's interesting, too, is if you go and do a search, so for example, let's say we search MSNBC. Hold on. So yeah, here's a simple chart. My apologies. I originally had this up, and then I think I lost the image I was looking for. Anyhow, here we go. So you have a variety of places that will do a analysis of how biased far left, how far right-leaning things are. As you can see, New York Post, Fox, Washington Examiner, Washington Times. Sources aren't acceptable. AP, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, The Atlantic, left and far left, perfectly acceptable on Wikipedia. What's kind of funny is that things like All Sides and Ad Fonte and these other sources that judge how biased media is are also not acceptable per Wikipedia as a source. So they're kind of creating a protective echo chamber for themselves to function in. But of course, they also have a backdoor for the editors, where despite the fact, and a lot of these tabs are various other rules I was planning on digging into, but since time's running short, I won't. You can ignore all the rules when you decide to, based on your judgment. And in fact, there's a handy dandy chart. You have an idea. Are you sure it's a good idea? By common sense, that improves an encyclopedia. No, don't do it. Yes. Does it break the rules? No. Do it. Does it break the rules? Yes. Is that because the rules are wrong? Yes. Then make the change. And so, a lot of the old school editors will hammer you over the head with various rules that you're violating, some of which they'll use to get you banned. But when they decide to, they can break all the rules they want just because they feel like it. It's really kind of a fascinating world that Wikipedia lives in. Where they've kind of established themselves as kings. So as we go down further, by the way, going back to emphasizing the unreliable sources, about 3 weeks ago or so, RFK made a statement that was taken out of context about how an NIH study showed that COVID had different impact on different ethnicities, which is a commonly known thing. For example, sickle cell anemia is known to impact the African American community more than other ethnic groups. It's been well documented that some diseases impact certain ethnicities more, and they decided to jump on it. So you can see the timestamp 140 UCT. Someone saw the article from the New York Post. However, New York Post is not a reliable source, and you can see these people 19 minutes later, where they're waiting for someone else to pick it up. That's reliable. 41 minutes later, you have another source that picks it up. You have this guy commenting, let's wait 30 more minutes and see how it works. And then you have this guy again, who you'll see a lot in a lot of these chats. Will say, then says, let's run with it. Daily Beast and National Review are enough. Despite the fact that these are not sources they're supposed to use, they'll break the rules, as needed when needed, to push the agenda. And in this case, they want to put up something to demonize RFK as soon as possible. So it's really kind of fascinating. Yeah, the rules, it's more of that, rules for thee, but not for me, that's being used by the long-term editors and admins, whenever needed. Again, this guy's talking about how less, and it's funny too, there is actually a push. This guy's talking about how less editors and less, variety of opinion is actually good for Wikipedia. And he quotes an article from a source that's not an approved source from Wikipedia. But that's what he's going to use to justify his point of we should ban more people who don't think like us. And this goes more into how, notability and opinion matters more than factual accuracy. RFK's notability has shifted from married to famous actress to Harvard graduate because he graduated from Harvard. What people know you for in common society is more important than what you've actually done. It's really remarkable. And I'm going to end on this one last point. This, was an example I saw back in 2016 of Wikipedia bias. I took these screenshots myself. And these are screenshots of Donald J. Harris, who's also the father of Kamala Harris. In his original Wikipedia page, in about July 2016, before Kamala Harris was picked as Joe Biden's vice president, it mentioned how he claimed to be a direct ancestor of Hamilton Brown, a slave owner. So the Harris family doesn't descend from slaves, they descend from slave owners. This is also, 2020, the heart of the George Floyd riots and such. And, this is the period where Joe Biden's telling, Black America, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. And they're desperate for the black vote. Lo and behold, shortly after Kamala Harris is picked as Joe Biden's VP, page gets locked down, and they remove any mention about how she descends from slave owners. What a coincidence. Did the sources that originally stated disappear? No. One of the other things, too, is on top of having sources that can reflect a very strong bias, they can pick and choose what they want to emphasize and what they don't want to emphasize. Going back to the soft language behind the struggles of Hunter Biden's drug addiction, or the false conspiracy theories around the accusations of any sort of impropriety and corruption around the Biden family, versus, they can also emphasize things like conspiracy theorists, anti-vax, heroin convict, as they deem fit. So it's, the main point of this is that we need to get out the information that Wikipedia isn't that reliable. Millions of people, every day, billions of people around the world every year are turning to Wikipedia as a source for truth, and it's anything but truth. And so it's very important that people understand what Wikipedia really is. It's kind of a fun playground for opinion. It might be decent as a first start as a first start to get background on something. Definitely not politics, definitely not current events, definitely not on a few other topics. But if you leave your understanding of any topic to just Wikipedia, you really don't know much at all. And in fact, you might be incredibly misinformed, as a lot of articles and research studies have shown.
This is all very, very scary. And I said at the beginning, Wikipedia was good for looking up African aardvarks, but apparently you can't even look up raccoons and aardvarks with any confidence. But the scariest thing is, I watched MSNBC for years and years, and eventually, and I took them as factual, but eventually I learned they're not factual. And same with Fox, but at least to a certain degree, when you're watching one of those cable news stations, you're not necessarily getting news, you're getting opinion. Wikipedia, and I've said this often, I used to say I have a problem with people who are of the opinion that their opinions are facts. And Wikipedia appears to be that on steroids, because they're presenting their opinions as facts. And I mean, this is classic fascism. This is classic propaganda, classic gaslighting. I have a fear right now because we know that Google, YouTube, and Wikipedia are all in the same little journalistic cabal. And I'm grateful that I have a platform to use on YouTube. Hopefully, I won't get banned behind this. But you know what? Part of me hopes I do get banned behind this, because I'll scream from the rooftops that what happened is I had a guest on to expose the truth and got banned for it. So they can do whatever they want to do. I really appreciate your coming on, because I learned a lot today. I'm sure everybody watching this learned a lot today. Now, I get a couple of dozen views if I'm lucky, but hopefully this will get shared widely. And you've done a lot of research, and maybe keep those links alive, because if people are asking for them, we might want to provide them. Some of the documents came in a little fuzzy on the screen, so we might want to provide links for people who want to take a closer look. But Prince Agrawal, you've done an outstanding job of making your case here, and thanks very much. And I hope the day comes that we need to do a follow-up on this, and that you'll be willing to do it.
Sure. Well, hopefully the day comes where Wikipedia tries to uphold itself to the standard of what an encyclopedia is supposed to be, instead of trying to be a parrot for mainstream media and pushing misinformation, unfortunately.
All right. Well, and with that, I'm just going to say the boomer has blathered. Thank you all for watching.
Thank you.